Hi boys and girls, happy Tuesday. I'm here to do our daily read aloud, and we're actually going to finish our journey today with Edward. So we're going to be finishing our story, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane today. So very exciting news. But before we do that, I just want to do a couple reminders. So today is Tuesday. We had our math Zoom this morning if you were in mine and Mrs. Putney's math class. And if you weren't there, I'll be looking for an email because you'll have to come to make some of that work up. But if you were there, then you're all good for math. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so we will be Zooming for ELA at 10 a.m. if you're in my math class, or my ELA class. Oh my goodness, I'm saying math for ELA. So tomorrow is Wednesday. We will be Zooming for ELA at 10 o'clock. I will have the link posted on our Google Classroom page, and then you can also find it in your email. I'll send you an email in the morning with that. We're going to be talking about point of view, which is pretty much, we should be pretty kind of good with that. It should be very familiar. We've talked about it quite a bit this year. So we're going to be doing some more with point of view tomorrow. And I think that's all my announcements for today for the most part. But I'm going to finish our story up today, and then I have to decide what I want to do kind of for our rest of the time together, because we're going to kind of be wrapping the school year up. I don't know if I want to start a whole nother new novel. We might do maybe some shorter stories, maybe some poetry. We'll have to see what happens, what we decide to do. So today we're going to finish the story up though, and my challenge for you today, so I have a challenge today. It is beautiful outside. I have the windows open in my house. There's a nice breeze coming in. It's very, very nice out. So my challenge for you today is to take a piece of paper, go under a tree. So you actually have two choices. You can take a piece of paper and go under a tree and try to write something for like 10 minutes. Just sit there for 10 minutes, see if you get any inspiration to write something. Maybe it's a song, maybe it's a poem, a short story. But sometimes sitting under a tree can give us some inspiration for some different writing things. So you can either take a piece of paper under a tree, or I'm sure you can guess the other thing I'm going to say. Or you could take a book under a tree and read under the tree. So read a book under the tree. So that's my challenge today. If you do that and you want to take a picture of yourself doing it under the tree with your iPad, feel free to do that and post it to our Google Classroom. I would love to see that. So, all right, here we go. We're going to finish up our journey with Edward Tulane. Chapter 26. There you are, my lady. Meet the rabbit doll, said Lucius. The doll mender walked away, turning out the lights one by one. In the gloom of the shop, Edward could see that the doll's head, like his, had been broken and repaired. Her face was, in fact, a web of cracks. She was wearing a baby bonnet. How do you do? She said in a high, thin voice. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. Hello, said Edward. Have you been here long? She asked. Months and months, said Edward, but I don't care. One place is the same as another to me. Oh, not for me, said the doll. I have lived 100 years, and in that time I have been in places that were heavenly and others that were horrid. After a time, you learn that each place is different, and you become a different doll in each place, too. Quite different. 100 years? Said Edward. I am old, the doll mender confirmed this. He said as he was mending me that I am at least 100. At least 100 years old. Edward thought about everything that had happened to him in his short life. What kind of adventures would you have if you were in the world for a century? The old doll said, I wonder who will come for me this time. Someone will come. Someone always comes. Who will it be? I don't care if anyone comes for me, said Edward. But that's dreadful, said the old doll. There's no point in going on if you feel that way. No point at all. You must be filled with expectancy. You must be awash in hope. You must wonder who will love you, whom you will love next. I am done with being loved, Edward told her. I'm done with loving. It's too painful. Psh, said the old doll. Where is your courage? Somewhere else, I guess, said Edward. You disappoint me, she said. You disappoint me greatly. If you have no intention of loving or being loved, then the whole journey is pointless. You might as well leap from this shelf right now and let yourself shatter into a million pieces. Get it over with. Get it all over with now. I would leap if I was able, said Edward. Shall I push you? Said the old doll. No, thank you, Edward said to her. Not that you could, he muttered to himself. What's that? Nothing, said Edward. The dark in the doll shop was now complete. The old doll and Edward sat on their shelf and stared straight ahead. You disappoint me, said the old doll. Her words made Edward think of Pellegrina, of warthogs and princesses, of listening and love, of spells and curses. What if there was somebody waiting to love him? What if there was someone whom he would love again? Was it possible? Edward felt his heart stir. No, he told his heart, not possible. Not possible. In the morning, Lucius Clark came and unlocked the shop. Good morning, my darlings, he called out to them. Good morning, my lovelies. He pulled up the shades on the windows. He turned on the light over his tools. He switched the sign on the door to open. The first customer was a little girl with her father. "Are you looking for something special?" Lucius Clark said to them. "Yes," said the girl. "I am looking for a friend." Her father put her on his shoulders, and they walked slowly around the shop. The girl studied each doll carefully. She looked Edward right in the eyes. She nodded at him. "Have you decided, Natalie?" her father asked. "Yes," she said. "I want the one in the baby bonnet." "Oh," said Lucius Clark. "You know that she is very old. She is an antique." "She needs me," said Natalie firmly. Next to Edward, the old doll let out a sigh. She seemed to sit up straighter. Lucius came and took her off the shelf and handed her to Natalie. And when they left, when the girl's father opened the door for his daughter and the old doll, a bright shaft of early morning light came flooding in, and Edward heard quite clearly, as if she were still sitting next to him, the old doll's voice. Here's a picture. "Open your heart," she said gently. "Someone will come. Someone will come for you, but first you must open your heart." The door closed. The sunlight disappeared. "Someone will come." Edward's heart stirred. He thought, for the first time in a long time, of the house on Egypt Street and of Abilene winding his watch and then bending toward him and placing it on his left leg, saying, "I will come home to you." No, he told himself. Don't believe it. Don't let yourself believe it. But it was too late. Someone will come for you. The China Rabbit's heart had begun again to open. Chapter 27. Seasons passed. Fall and winter and spring and summer. Leaves blew in through the open door of Lucius Clark's shop, and rain and the green, outrageous, hopeful light of spring. People came and went, grandmothers and doll collectors and little girls with their mothers. Edward Tulane waited. The seasons turned into years. Edward Tulane waited. He repeated the old doll's words over and over until they were a smooth groove of hope in his brain. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. And the old doll was right. Someone did come. It was springtime. It was raining. There were dogwood blossoms on the floor of Lucius Clark's shop. She was a small girl, maybe 5 years old, and while her mother struggled to close a blue umbrella, the little girl walked around the store, stopping and staring solemnly at each doll and then moving on. When she came to Edward, she stood in front of him for what seemed like a long time. She looked at him, and he looked back at her. "Someone will come," Edward said. "Someone will come for me." The girl smiled, and then she stood on her tiptoes and took Edward off the shelf. She cradled him in her arms. She held him in the same ferocious, tender way Sarah Ruth had held him. "Oh," thought Edward, "I remember this." "Madam," said Lucius Clark, "could you please attend to your daughter? She is holding a very fragile, very precious, quite expensive doll." "Maggie," said the woman. She looked up from the still open umbrella. "What have you got?" "A rabbit," said Maggie. "A what?" said the mother. "A rabbit," said Maggie again. "I want him." "Remember, we're not buying anything today. We're looking only," said the woman. "Madam," said Lucius Clark, "please." The woman came and stood over Maggie. She looked down at Edward. The rabbit felt dizzy. He wondered for a minute if his head had cracked open again, if he was dreaming. "Look, Mama," said Maggie. "Look at him." "I see him," said the woman. She dropped the umbrella. She put her hand on the locket that hung around her neck. And Edward saw then that it was not a locket at all. It was a watch, a pocket watch. It was his watch. "Edward?" said Abilene. "Yes," said Edward. "Edward," she said again, certain this time. "Yes," said Edward. "Yes, yes, yes. It's me." So what's happened is all this time has gone on. So the little girl Abilene, who Edward started with at the beginning, is now grown into a woman, and she now has her own daughter, and she's in this shop and finds Edward. So now that is the end of our story, but there is another little section called Coda, which I'm going to read very quickly. Once there was a China rabbit who was loved by a little girl. The rabbit went on an ocean journey and fell overboard and was rescued by a fisherman. He was buried under garbage and unburied by a dog. He traveled for a long time with the hobos and worked for a short time as a scarecrow. Once there was a rabbit who loved a little girl and watched her die. The rabbit danced on the streets of Memphis. His head was broken open in a diner and was put together again by a doll mender. And the rabbit swore that he would not make the mistake of loving again. Once there was a rabbit who danced in a garden in springtime with the daughter of the woman who had loved him at the beginning of his journey. The girl swung the rabbit as she danced in circles. Sometimes they went so fast, the two of them, that it seemed as if they were flying. Sometimes it seemed as if they both had wings. Once, oh marvelous once, there was a rabbit who found his way home. And that's the end. So the end of this book ends with some questions to consider. So I'm just going to read through these questions to get you kind of thinking. So you don't have to answer these on like a paper, but just to get your mind moving about this story. So it says questions to consider. The day the maid misplaces Edward, Abilene runs from room to room, calling for him. Why does Abilene love him so much? What emotion does Edward feel in return, and why? There's one question to consider. Number 2. Why does Pellegrina tell the story to Abilene and Edward about a princess who loves no one and is turned into a warthog or a witch? Why does she tell that story? Number 3. How does Lally feel when she discovers that her parents are treating Edward like a rabbit child? What do you think of her decision to get rid of Edward? Number 4. Bull describes himself and Lucy as lost. What does he mean by that? Number 5. When the old woman uses Edward as a scarecrow, he feels mocked by the stars, which seem to say, "You are down there alone." When he tells the stars, "I have been loved," they replied, "What difference does that make when you are all alone now?" What do you think? Does being loved change the way loneliness is felt? And the last question, number 6. In the doll store, Edward prided himself on not hoping, on not allowing his heart to lift inside of him. He prided himself on keeping his heart silent, immobile, closed tight. "I'm done with hope," thought Edward Tulane. Why does Edward feel this way? Do you think this is the right decision? All right. So I'm going to leave you with those questions to consider for today. And we'll have to figure out what we're going to be reading next because we have finished our journey with Edward. I'd like you to think back to your predictions that you made earlier on when we were reading. I had you all kind of make predictions. Like Edward kept moving to all these different places. And I said, where do you think Edward will end up? Do you think he'll end up back with Abilene? And for some of you that may have thought that, he really actually did. So kind of see how your predictions were, your inferences that you made, see how true they were or not true they were. So that is all for me today. Enjoy this beautiful weather outside. Like I said, take up on my challenge, go under a tree to either read or write, and post a picture if you're able to take one. Have a great day, everyone.